to introduce Dana Cody. Dana has been championing the rights of women and the unborn for over 20 years. And she started as a lay counselor to women in crisis pregnancies, and then fulfilled her passion to protect women and children victimized by abortion by obtaining her law degree from Western State University in 1993. She first worked as the staff counsel for the Rutherford Institute's Western Regional Office, then in Sacramento, California. And from there she went to work as a consultant to the Assembly Education Committee, then chaired by pro-life Assembly member Steve Baldwin. Assembly member Baldwin was also a member of the Assembly Health Committee, which allowed Dana to get involved with Mr. Baldwin on life issues. In 1996, she accepted the invitation to serve as a board member of Life Legal Defense Foundation. And when she left her consulting position, she accepted the position as Life Legal's executive director. Ms. Cody was the co-counsel in People's Advocate versus ICOC, a suit challenging the constitutionality of the governing board of the California Institute for Regenerative Medicine to fund human embryonic stem cell research. She's also served as an adjunct professor at Trinity Law School in Santa Ana, California, and she's taught the course The Right to Life and the Law. She's also served as Judge Pro Tem for the Sacramento Superior Court at the Carol Miller Justice Center. Dana's been a long and valued colleague. She escaped and moved to Florida, but she commutes via email and phone and everything else, and remains as the executive director of the Life Legal Defense Foundation. A wonderful colleague and a mother. Please step forward.
You all notice my folder is blue. Blue folder. I need to change my folder color to red. I'm from a red state, and well, he's not my congressman, but one of our congressmen said recently, we're going to stay a red state. I hope he's right. When Mike asked me to speak today, he asked me to introduce Life Legal, because I don't know if all of you are real familiar with who we are, and this is sort of our first foray into healthcare. And I'm anxious to know, is there anybody in the audience that is not Catholic? Could you raise your hand? I want to put you on the spot. Oh my, see, I'm the only one here. Okay, well, thank you for being the leaders in this area, because, pardon me?
The bishop says you can stay.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And I said this at our board meeting, and I'll say it again. You know, I hear some of my Catholic friends complain about, oh, the church doesn't do this and the church doesn't do that. Well, I'm an evangelical, and our church doesn't do a heck of a lot on any of this. So, privileged to be here. I'm hoping that in the future we can get more of us non-Catholics out and get us interested in these issues. Life Legal Defense Foundation. We were established in 1989. Our mission is to give innocent and helpless human beings of any age trained and committed defense against threat of death in the courtrooms of our nation by representing their advocates. We do this obviously through litigation. We also do it through education, and that's why one of the reasons why we decided to co-sponsor this conference. We've had involvement with conscience issues on and off over the years. For example, a state worker who doesn't want to process an application for abortion through Medicus or something like that. But we've had a marked increase in the last few years with conscience rights, and particularly with respect to pharmacists. So what we did is, back in the fall, we had a conference that was held in the Salem, Oregon area called Do No Harm. It was specifically geared to train pharmacists about their conscience rights, not only what I call their first rights, but their statutory rights, the regulations that they're mandated for them to practice professionally. But the first rights, what I call the first rights, the First Amendment rights, what does the First Amendment say? We have the right to, Congress shall make no law establishing a religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. That and the general medical disciplines of do no harm apply to all medical professionals. And so that is still available on our website if any of you are interested. You can take a look. It's about an hour and a half. And actually, the materials that come along with it give a great breakdown, state by state, of conscience statutes that exist. We have also been involved recently with the conscience issue in the 11th Circuit Court of Appeal, filing not the 11th Circuit Court of Appeal, at the United States Supreme Court, from a decision in the 11th Circuit, which is Florida, my state, go Florida, where the lower court held that Obamacare, the Patients Affordable Protection Health Care Act, is an unprecedented exercise of congressional power. And congressional power that applies, of course, to the states through the 14th Amendment. And so a lot of what I want to talk to you today is about the appropriate role of government, and just to reiterate some things that a few of the other speakers have already mentioned. So we filed this friend of the court brief to point the court to a provision within Obamacare, and the section is up here on the screen, what we're calling an abortion premium mandate, where, and I believe it was Richard Dorfman that mentioned the premium that goes into a fund, and you pay for other people's abortions. And the notice provisions with respect to those premiums are something that you get initially through your plan. It's not mentioned again. And so I like the way that the writer of the brief characterized it, said this is like a Russian doll nestled within Obamacare, is this unconstitutional abortion premium mandate. You don't see it, you don't know it's there. You have to really pay attention. So, back to first rights. I don't want to confuse that amicus brief with what I want to talk about now. That's how we've been involved with conscience. That is what Life Legal does. We try to protect the unborn. We try to protect people towards the end of their lives, the elderly, the disabled, and we do that through litigation and education. So back to first rights. Both speakers mentioned the Catholic Charities case, and up on the screen again is the definition of religion under that case. And well, I have to wonder where inculcation of religious values has to be a primary purpose, administered by people who hold those values and serving people who hold those values. What is the point? If they already believe like you do, and you're ministering to people that believe like you do, what is the point of this definition? Other than, obviously, trying to usurp the free exercise rights of people who have sincerely held beliefs. One of the other speakers, I forget which one, mentioned that this isn't just about an established religion. It's about sincerely held beliefs on so many levels. The case law makes that very clear. And so we have this definition, and I want to distinguish that definition from Catholic Charities from the definition that currently exists under the Department of Health and Human Services. What happened when the Women's Equity and Contraceptive Act was passed in California, and this definition was the definition that the state Supreme Court said was constitutional. And basically the state Supreme Court said, Catholic Charities, you are a social service agency, you are not a religious organization. You admit it under this definition. So if you have a problem with your conscience and providing contraceptives under your prescription plan, then you just don't have to provide contraceptives at all. And so, I mean, that is an obnoxious and offensive way to get around what I think is clearly excessive entanglement in religion. What business does the court, what business does the legislature, what business does the Department of Health and Human Services have telling us that something that we do based on our religious convictions is not religious? I mean, we have two conflicting religious tenets warring against each other here. We have life-affirming values, and so we don't take life. God is the author and creator of life. And then we have these values of providing charity because That's what Jesus Christ did. So the court's answer, the Supreme Court's answer was, just don't provide prescription coverage. The distinction with the Department of Health and Human Services, alluded to earlier also, was under Obamacare, you don't have that option. You will comply, period. And that affects us on so many levels. And it sets up an infrastructure that's very dangerous. I like what Justice Janice Brown said in the dissent in Catholic Charities. She said that this is such a crabbed and constricted view of religion that even the ministry of Jesus Christ would be considered secular. And, what did Jesus do? He healed the sick. He fed the hungry. He helped the poor. And that's what we do. I was amazed at Ned's breaking down for us what the Catholic Church does just in the state of California. And such a crabbed and constricted view that even the ministry of Jesus Christ would be considered secular. There was something else that Justice Brown said in her dissent, and it's been so long since I've read the case that I don't remember if she said this because the parties didn't raise the issue or because this is something that she thought, but I want to read this to you real quickly. She said, got to find it here, that in Catholic Charities, that neither the propriety nor the wisdom of, nor the government's authority to impose a prescription mandate on California employers is at issue here. So I don't know if she's saying it was not an issue because the parties didn't raise it, or if it wasn't an issue because she thought that that was the proper role of government. And I would submit to you that it's not the proper role of government. And I want to explain that a little bit further with, take a look at that. It takes you a minute to get it. But when you think about it, it's really not funny. Because we're at a crossroads. We're at crossroads. We have a First Amendment, we have a Declaration of Independence that says that we are endowed with, by our Creator, with certain inalienable rights. And we're at a crossroads because if this Health and Human Services mandate is not stopped, we will live in a country where our inalienable rights come from the state. And by the state, I don't just mean this state, my state. The state, the government, at the federal level, which applies to the states, again, through the 14th Amendment. I mean, we are at a crossroads. So let's look at some quotes. The rights of man come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. I believe John F. Kennedy was a Democrat. The greatest calamity which could befall us would be submission to a government of unlimited powers. And if this Health and Human Services mandate is not an example of unlimited powers, I don't know what is, because if this mandate stands, the government will be inserting itself into every aspect of our lives. And, I saw this back in 95, 96 when I worked for the state legislature in the context of education and the authority of California school boards to excuse children from school for confidential medical services. We all know what that means. And so many other levels. There were healthcare providers. Kaiser Permanente was one of them that used to come into board meetings that I would attend as an attorney saying children have a right to privacy. Their parents have no business interfering with their medical care. I mean, this has been going on since 1996 to my knowledge and probably before. So this is serious stuff. When I show the picture of President Obama and that cardinal saying, no, thank you, we already have a God, it's funny at first, but then you stop and think about what's going on, and it's really not so funny. So we've heard over the past few weeks, over and over again, this is is not about contraceptives, this is about religious liberty. But it is about religious liberty, that's absolutely correct. But it's also about seeing our nation become a nation that is no longer a constitutional republic. And so that's sort of an oppressive thought. And I'm glad to know that later on in the conference we'll be given some sort of action items to see that this does not happen. After the mandate came out and there was this firestorm of controversy, came the accommodation. We've reached a decision on how to move forward. Under the rule, women will still have access to free preventative care that includes contraceptive services, no matter where they work, so that the core principle remains. But if a woman's employer is a charity or a hospital that has a religious objection to providing contraceptive services as part of their health plan, the insurance company, not the hospital, not the charity, will be required to reach out and offer the women contraceptive services free of charge without co-pays or hassles. But this was alluded to earlier or spoken about earlier as well. I mean, that's so ridiculous. Who do they think is paying for the insurance? And you still have to make a referral. You have to let the person know, go to the insurance company. So it's really not an accommodation at all. Again, no provision in our Constitution ought to be dearer to man than that of rights of conscience against the enterprises of the civil authority. So, what's our response to this challenge? I've heard it said that the bishops have taken the position that if we will not comply, we will close our doors. But I don't think that that's the appropriate position. That's easy for me to say. I'm not the one running all these facilities. But let me tell you why I think that. I mentioned earlier, we have two conflicting rights here. Religious people, people of conscience, they have a conundrum here. Which tenet are you going to ignore? I'm going to get emotional here because I see our country deteriorating. I live in a constitutional republic. I want to continue to live in a constitutional republic. And so we're going to be forced to choose whether or not we're going to be obedient with respect to these life-affirming values that we hold, or are we going to be obedient as we emulate our Savior and provide charity? We cannot, in good conscience, close our doors. We can't. We have to remain open, and we have to not comply. And that means litigation, perhaps persecution. I don't know what that will look like down the road. Oral arguments have been had, and we'll see what happens. Maybe will be a good result. A lot of people are praying. We need to keep praying. But we can't close our doors, and we cannot comply. So I mentioned earlier the Declaration of Independence, and the phrase we always hear about our inalienable rights. I want to read to you something else. The time has come. This is where I'm going to get emotional. The time has come, ladies and gentlemen. It's time to stand up in mass and say it is necessary for one people to dissolve. And let me tell you where the quote starts. Quote, necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. This is not me talking, and I don't know what form that will take. That's our founding fathers talking, and I think the time has come. I mean, this is serious stuff, and we need to be in prayer. And I can say for one that we're about to get involved in litigation. Depending on the outcome of Obamacare, there will be a lot of litigation. There'll be lots of other things going on peripherally, but it's time to stand up, and it's time to remember that preamble to the Declaration of Independence. And this is not about contraceptives, and it's not just about religious liberty. It's about the whole structure of our government. There it is. It's time to stand up. So as I was going through stuff, I'll call it. And what I wanted to talk about, I was reminded, and I do a daily Bible reading through my church. And I was reading through the Old Testament where the Lord told Moses to go into the land and take that land. And Moses could see it, but he couldn't go in because of his sin. And he sent in spies, and spies came back, and they said, they're too big. We can't do it. And there were 2 dissenting spies, Joshua and Caleb, and they said, do not fear them, the Lord is with us. And when I say, it's time to make a stand, this will be no easy battle. And it definitely invokes some fear. And I think we all need to claim the Scripture, we need to remember the Scripture, and we need to stand up in Mass and say, we're not going to let this happen. And we can do that in the ways that were mentioned by the other speakers. Get involved in the Health and Human Services comments, supporting the legislation for rights of conscience. But we need to stand up and we need to say, no thank you, we already have a God. So looking forward to the rest of the day, and hopefully we'll give you some action items to really take hold of this and make a difference.